So, if any of you are my loyal viewers, you might be asking why I've started up another segment, and a non-pony one at that. Because there's more to life than ponies, people. There are also wizards, and hobbits, and Jedi, and I'm getting off topic. Basically, when I try to keep up with the summer blockbusters, I got suckered into joining this rewards program at the theater right outside of my work, which allows for discount movies on Tuesdays. And yes, I plan on exploiting the ever-living out of that. So every Tuesday, if there is a movie I want to watch, I will see it and give you guys a quick review by the following Tuesday. Now, you may be wondering if there are spoilers or not. And the answer is yes, to both. I will first review the movie with no more information to the plot than you could find in the trailers, and then dive right into the spoilers afterwards. Don't worry, I'll give you guys a heads up when I make this transition, so those who don't want to be spoiled before they see the movie can click away. So, what's our first installment? Why, Star Trek, of course. Was it good? Of course. Now, when I say that, I should warn you that I am the target demographic. I went to the first movie very skeptical, but I was indeed won over by the movie and have been an avid fan since. So for these reviews, rather than saying good, bad, or meh, or go by some grading scale, I'm going to rate the movie on recommendability, which really is all reviewers are supposed to do, but we get suckered into drama and crap. So I will judge movies on how much I recommend them and to whom I recommend them. In the case of Star Trek Beyond, if you were already planning on seeing it, you will enjoy it. If you were not, I don't think this is the movie to turn your head. Not that the movie was too cookie-cutter, in fact it went against many of the typical tropes, but it's not enough of a deviation to convert non-Trekkies into Trekkies, or even purists to reform their ways. I might give a gentle nudge to the Shatner or bust purists to give it another chance, but I won't force the matter, nor will I keep my hopes up. The best way to describe this movie is by saying that it's an equilibrium. This is to say, if we were to compare it to Star Trek Into Darkness, I would say it does not have the same strengths, but nor does it have the same weaknesses. I loved Into Darkness, but I'm not going to deny that there were flaws. But few of the things that bothered me from Into Darkness are in this movie. I'll go into more detail when I get to the spoiler section. But the big selling point of Into Darkness was the brilliance that is Benedict Cumberbatch, and even just the way the setup of the character of Khan. There is no Benedict Cumberbatch in this movie, and to be honest, the villain in this movie was weaker as a whole. Not terrible, but definitely weaker. So in summary of the non-spoiler section, if you are a fan of the other two Star Trek movies, you'll love this one. If not, you're dead inside. I mean, to each their own. And as the send-off note, little something I would have told my past self to encourage her to see the movie, don't worry, there isn't any sexual fan service. Before I get into the proper spoiler review, I want to talk about something that is important. Death. Not character death, but actor death. As I'm sure many of you are aware, we lost not one but two members of the Star Trek family recently. This was the first Star Trek movie that was released after Leonard Nimoy's death. This seemed strange to me going in. The Star Trek movies have always been Leonard's babies. Even the ones he wasn't in, he usually was involved in the production somehow. So these new movies knew they couldn't survive without the blessings of the father. Going on without him, somehow it felt wrong. And yet the movie treats it with proper respect. Yes, they kill off the original Spock in canon within the first few minutes of the movie. Not that this is the first time that Spock has died, but this time we all know there's no resurrecting him. I think they did a brilliant job grieving the character's death and, by extension, the actors, and tried to give us tools to move on. It didn't work, but it was worth a shot. The other death in the family sadly happened within too much short notice for the same amount of respect to be given in the film. On June 19th, Anton Yelchin, the actor who played Chekhov, was pinned by his own Jeep, which was under recall notices due to unintentional rolling, and died at the age of 27. This was a heavy loss that sadly happened within only enough time for them to slap up "For Anton" in the credits. And yet that little detail, especially since it comes right after "In Loving Memory of Leonard Nimoy," put a tear in my eye much more than the rest of the movie did. I was upset too because Chekhov was one of those least known members of the original crew. As such, it seemed to me, at least in the beginning of the movie, that the camera seemed to pan away right before focusing on Anton. And of all the characters, he was given the least amount of time to shine. I can't help but wonder, where will they go from here? Will they kill off Chekhov as they did Spock? Or will they recast him? Both seem wrong. It almost seemed to me that with the death of these two men, it's hard for the Star Trek movie franchise to continue. But only time will tell. Alright, sub time over. Spoiler review time! I will try to keep this brief. Star Trek fans, tell me if this sounds familiar. A smart but strong, attractive young girl with a tragic backstory encounters the crew and they end up helping each other, and then she is ceremoniously swept off to some task or other in Starfleet. So yeah, check all those boxes in this movie. But you know what box wasn't checked for that character? Sleeping with Kirk! This kind of character comes up a lot in the Star Trek universe and almost always used as something for Kirk to drool over. But there's none of that here. I mean it, none! Not like the last movie, which had that underwear scene for no reason. She stays fully and actually rather conservatively clothed. Kirk doesn't even flirt with this character. Do you realize how rare that is? There's no romantic subplot revolving this female character. At most, there's a little shipping fuel for her and Scotty, but you know me, when two characters spend more than 5 minutes together in a movie, I'm determined that they must live happily ever after. Speaking of, Bones Spock best hate ship? I mean, it works. Heck, the last scene of the movie even has Bones wearing a necklace, which for a second I thought was similar to the necklace that Spock gave Uhura, expressing his respect for her. And Spock did tell Bones that he respected him in the movie. And yeah, I'm shipping trash, but Star Trek fandom invented /shipping. What did you think was gonna happen? Speaking of shipping, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Sulu is gay! I heard about this before going into the movie, but what I didn't know was that he has the most adorable daughter in the world. Strange, though, that both his husband and his daughter are Asian when Star Trek is known for being a trailblazer for interracial couples. But I guess we have to make sure that Miss Demora Sulu is as Japanese as her father. That's a minor detail I don't mind. For the most part, I was super excited about it. But something was bothering me, and I used this review as an excuse to address why. Apparently, it's something that actually bothered George Takei, too. Sulu in the original Star Trek was straight. There's no doubt upon watching the original series that Sulu had a thing for the ladies. While not as open as Kirk, there were times when, under the influence of some alien plant or other, he would show a far more flirtatious side which seemed to be limited to women. But it's the 60s, I hear you guys say. People weren't as open-minded then as they are now. Very true, but Star Trek didn't take place in the 60s. It takes place in a very tolerant future. Take into account the only difference between the old universe and the new one is a slight ripple in time leading to slightly different circumstances which might lead to slightly different choices which might lead to slightly different outcomes. And this is where it rubbed me the wrong way. Sulu in the original universe was straight. Sulu in the new universe is gay. Why? Why is it different? The only thing that is different between the two universes are the choices the characters have made. And that's why it's odd. Saying Sulu is gay in one universe and not in another seems to support the homosexuality is a choice theory. I'm not a fan of this mentality. But, to solace my paranoia, maybe he's bi? Maybe it didn't come up in the original series because he usually favored women, but maybe he was only able to meet his husband through the events in this new universe, causing his head to turn. That's the only explanation I can really accept. Still, though, they're cute, and really that's all that matters. So, as I mentioned earlier, I think the biggest weakness of this movie was the villain. I will repeat that he is not a bad villain, but if you were to compare him to Khan, yeah, he doesn't come out on top. And part of this has to do with their role in Kirk's character arc. In Into Darkness, it was all about the similarities of the two characters, the parallels that made them similar, and the core values that made them different. Heck, Kirk even sort of looks up to Khan at the beginning of the movie, in a sort of I'm jealous that you're better than me kind of way. In Beyond, they just sort of slap on a "we're similar" at the end and don't really explain why or set that up in any way. As far as I can tell, Kirk's identity crisis has no links to Krall's story at all. Kirk's crisis in this movie is that after 3 years in deep space mission, he feels his life is getting episodic. I loved that pun, by the way. He seeks to remedy this by applying for an admiral position, which, now that I think about it, how would that help? If life on the Enterprise is boring to you, how's a desk job going to help that? Anyway, Kirk is basically being a grumpy Gus. But the villain's motivations were different, I think. They didn't explain it very well. The origin story for the villain comes up randomly at the end with no time to get emotionally invested. And why did this military mind live so long? What is this life-prolonging stuff they had on the planet? Why did it change what they look like in that regard? Where did they get this ability to suck life out of young people? The motivation seemed kinda rushed. The funny thing is, when I see the whole youth-sucking thing, I thought the original write for the script was going to have Spock become victim to it as an excuse to throw Leonard Nimoy in the movie, and they find a way to cure him. But upon his death, they probably scrapped the idea, and instead had young Spock hobbling around because of a cauterized wound. Well, in fear of rambling too long, I'll just say character interaction good, villain meh.